If you're close to me or even know me a little bit, you most likely know that I switched schools about 2 years ago now. That's because I got psychosis, and when I eventually came back to Earth, school was over, and my mom decided it was time to switch schools. I'm making this video to be able to remember this experience before my trauma receptors inevitably nuke it out of my brain. I also want this video to serve as an explanation to the people who actually know me through this video on why I just up and vanished. My life truly changed forever after this and separated me from my friends. The friends I'm really close to have always stuck by my side, but ultimately, it ended up with me losing personal contact with all of my friends during that time, and some things will never really be the same. In this time, if you grow up in my school or overall friend circle, you without a 100% doubt have put one of these substances in your body at one time or another. The type of drug that I want to talk about in this triangle vary in the hallucinogenic range, because this range ended with me basically losing my top, so to speak. I'm about to tell you my entire recollection of my psychosis experience, and remember, this is really my recollection of everything. Obviously, there's going to be things that straight up never happened and were all in my head, which I will try to visualize for this video, and there's things that very well I know did happen in this time, with people I know even being able to back me up for it. This whole thing lasted a little bit over a month, so I'm gonna try my best to remember. If you don't want to hear about mental illnesses, etc., 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 then don't watch this video. Here's the story. This all started in the middle of my sophomore year, where my mental state was rapidly declining due to, well, it's a mystery. I was told after that this could have been the psychosis setting in, but I'm not really sure. It would make sense because I really wasn't myself. I had always had anxiety, but it got really bad out of nowhere, and going to school felt like I was having a lobotomy performed on me. I never really made it through a day. I was horribly depressed. My girlfriend even broke up with me because I was just not myself. We kept going back and forth. I even told her I never loved her at one point, which all of it was just not me. We got back together after this, thank God, but you get the picture. I was not myself, and I was shooting myself in the foot when it came to every aspect of my life. This led to the next phase, where I completely shut myself off from everyone and stopped going to school entirely. A mixture of going back and forth, with me showing up for a few days and telling myself this is where I was going to make a change, to completely giving up the next day and shutting myself off from the world. My mom made efforts to get me out of the house and out of my funk, but it was to no avail. My usual day consisted of laying in bed, watching TV, sleeping, hating myself, and that's about it. I watched all of Rick and Morty in like 2 days, watched a lot of other stuff, but I can't really remember what. I wish I started watching One Piece during that time, because I would have been caught up by now without a doubt. But with this, just made everything so much worse. I would lay in bed thinking of what I was doing with my life, hitting new lows over and over again every day, to the point where I would come to these new realizations on my purpose, and this led to me picking up drawing a lot. I've always loved to draw, but I've never drawn this much in my life. I was practicing drawing references from anime pictures off Pinterest mostly, and watching videos on how to become a better artist. I studied poses, clothes, facial expressions, all of that in desperate attempts of becoming a professional artist, I guess. Every single day, I would watch a little bit of whatever show I was watching in the morning, and then from day till night, I would be drawing every single day. And that's really all that I did. My phone meant little to nothing to me at this point. I didn't even play video games. I just watched TV like a old person with dementia and drew. Psychosis is pretty much the mental state where someone loses touch with reality and starts seeing or hearing things that aren't normally there. It can be from things like schizophrenia, or it can lead to schizophrenia. It can be because of bipolar disorder. It can be from stress, drug-induced, very usually drug-induced, and like brain injuries. If you've done shrooms or taken acid or even just like got high, you've gotten like a sliver of what having psychosis is like. But a severe case is when the condition is so bad that it doesn't go away for the next few days or weeks or months or forever. I was able to make it out, and I'm just very thankful that I'm able to share this story for sure. So anyway, next up, I decided to never talk to my friends again, and even the slight buzzing of phone calls from them sent me into panic attacks. It was during this time when the psychosis inevitably took over. Things to mention are the potential reasons for this. Obviously, the first being my day-to-day lifestyle and my declining mental state, but the overall trigger for it happening is still a mystery. I know I said I wasn't talking to anybody during this time, but it's really hazy, and all I can say for sure is that if I was hanging out with anybody, it was not very often. But I did stumble across a very potent weed cookie that my friend very kindly gifted to me. And I was eating a quarter of it every day while doing literally nothing at the same time. If that friend is watching right now, I just want you to know that this was never your fault at all. And if you ever feel like you're responsible for this in any way, just know that you are wrong, and this was all my doing. So the first theory is that it was drug-induced, because I got psychosis very shortly after, and if you do some research, cannabis is the #1 illicit substance that causes psychosis, with second and third place being meth and cocaine. So, yeah. The theory is actually pretty stable. The other one is that I'm bipolar, because I have had some weird depression episodes like this in the spring ever since I started high school, and even in my junior year something like this happened over the summer, but it wasn't nearly as bad as this. But I guess only time will tell to confirm these theories. Now, when everything first started, it was night. My mom had all of her friends over for dinner, and I could hear them outside my window. Later that night, one of my friend's moms stayed a little later, and my mom had me come down and talk to her. I showed her my drawing notebook, and she was pretty impressed. I had dinner with them at the table, and this is when things started to delve from reality to my mind's hallucinations. I remember thinking they were talking about what it was like to date black men and being white single mom feminists at the same time. I remember feeling really alienated because I started to picture my mom and my friend's mom as people that had underlying racist ideals. I think this was an abstract hallucination of my feelings around my dad that left when I was a newborn, mixed with the fact that my mom and her friend were the exes of black men, and somehow tied this to them being racist in some way. This was all in my head, and this wigged me out, so I left the table and went to the bathroom. And then when I started to pee, I heard my mom's friend in the other room making an sound. She was peeing with me, which one did not happen again, but two fucking freaked me out, so I ran upstairs and just continued to bed rot all night. I was watching Kaguya-sama Love is War at the time, which, don't judge. It's actually a really good and funny show if you've actually watched it. But this is really important because it massively tied into my psychosis. That night, I even told my mom that I was going to become a manga artist, out of nowhere. I don't even know. Anyway, I tried to go to sleep after that, and after an hour, it was apparent that I just couldn't sleep. My mind was just spiraling with different questions and concerns about my life and problems and crazy thoughts. Sleep was just out of the question. However, I kept trying, and this was when I heard an audible pop come from my nose, followed with one of the most horrible smells that I've ever smelled. Mostly because the smell wasn't even real. It wasn't your generic bad shitty smell. It was an odor an odor that you'd smell because you weren't supposed to smell. It was this sweet, nauseating, lingering, toxic smell. The smell eventually went away over time, but when it did, my nose would pop again, and I was again filled with this horrible smell. It's the feeling when your nose gets like uncongested and you kind of you don't hear a pop, but you like feel that like kind of opening in your nose. It was like that, and I could feel it in my nose, but I was like hearing a very loud pop every time that happened. So the night continued with the popping not looking like it was going to stop at any point, and finally at 4 a.m. I woke my mom up and said, "I think I can smell my brain dying." I can only imagine what my mom was thinking during this. She made me tea and tried to get me to go back to bed on the couch, and I can't remember if I did at all. The only thing I remember is just like being at the table for breakfast in the morning. Everything, I don't know if I slept. I'm really not sure. At this point, I was unable to form proper sentences, and even the very small sane part of my brain was telling me that something was wrong, but the damage was too great at this point, and communicating with anyone was like literally impossible. My mom recorded this breakfast convo because I was acting so odd, and I think I can find it.
Your entire life flashed before your eyes?
Yeah.
In what way?
One. Where? I I'm just It was like that feeling when you are in a dream and like you're trying to run away from something, but you just like can't, and you're stuck in slow motion. There was like I was like still mentally in there, and I was really scared, and I was trying to communicate outside to like reality, but whenever I tried to speak, it would come out in like really choppy, broken pieces, and nobody understood what I was saying. But yeah, I would say a word, and then like it would take 25 seconds to say the next one, and the next word would usually have nothing to do with the prior one. And the next thing I remember is my aunt comes over and my grandma shows up, and then my mom's boyfriend, and then zoom, I'm off to the hospital. I knew I was going to the hospital, but I convinced myself it was because of this really weird reason. Basically, there's this episode in Kaguya-sama Love is War where Kaguya gets like love sick and has to get like evaluated by a doctor, and my mind just turned into this episode for some reason. In the car, I was convinced that I was going to the hospital because I had no more love to give, and they were sending me there to get me fixed. I was also having thoughts like the only reason all the cars weren't crashing into each other on the road was because of a telepathic unanimous agreement to love each other. Which, I mean, I guess is true to an extent. When we got there, I was immediately wanting to leave. For some reason, my mom took me to a children's hospital rather than like a regular one, and I'm not really sure why, but it really did not make things much better. I remember the front desk lady asked me like questions about my birth date, and like gave me a wristband. I don't know if I said anything back because I was pretty incapable of communicating like that. But then we sat in the weight room, and I remember there was this kid sitting next to me on his iPad, and I heard that one cat song coming out of it. It's like that meme. I'm very aware this meme is connected to some NSFW stuff, but I can guarantee you I was not watching any of that, and I had only heard about this whole thing because it's a meme, and the song that's connected to it can very easily get stuck in your head. So just wanted to put that out there. I just remember being really confused why that kid was even watching that in the first place. But this also begs the question if he actually was. Because, I mean, it is really just a meme song, and he could have been like scrolling on TikTok on his greasy iPad. I don't really know. Next thing I know, I'm put into this terrifying ass room. It was like a regular children's hospital room, but like that made it 10 times more terrifying. There was one bed, a blank wall, and the back of the room was completely made of metal. And I didn't know that it did this until like one of the doctors pressed like their remote. This is later on down the line, but the back of the wall like opened up like a garage, and there was like more medical stuff, and it like turned into a bigger bed. Fucking freaked me out, but yeah. And like this is all real, by the way. It's just like an extra room. So this lady comes in and starts talking to me and my mom. I don't remember what she was saying. She was probably asking what the situation was about, but all I remember from this moment is the fact she had a clipboard with Pokemon stickers, which I instantly recognized as something that made me think she was like me. Like the fact that she had some generic anime stickers on her clipboard made me and her connected, and she was suffering through the same thing as me. And then I came to the conclusion that the hospital was like gonna extract her happiness and give it to me, and then she would become the patient, like she was some guinea pig getting sacrificed. This freaked me out really bad, and the popping noise came back, but louder, like really loud. And I was staring at the floor. The lady started talking to me, asking me questions, and something must have boiled over in my head a little too hard, because the next thing I heard was a loud pop. This one was like a flashbang. All I could hear was ringing, and I couldn't hear anyone or anything. I bursted into tears after this, and like literally directly in her face. And I could so faintly hear her say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go get someone. And then it was back to the loud ringing. This sound was all in my head, but it's actually crazy thinking back to it. I literally couldn't hear myself crying. And I think this is crazy, but I also think like most people don't really think about the extent of how much you can hallucinate on what you're hearing and what you're smelling. Like most people don't think that like you can even hallucinate smells in the first place, or like if auditory hallucinations are talked about, most people think it's like, oh, there's voices in your head, or like, oh, you're really paranoid, like somebody's on the phone or somebody's telling you shit. But like I was genuinely deaf. I wasn't really, but thinking back to this and how I experienced it, in my mind, I could not hear. Thinking back to it, I could not hear anything. But in reality, I could hear. Like, that's just crazy to me. Like, really anything goes when you're clinically insane. This marks the checkpoint to where I officially was submerged into the psychosis. Like, the very little sane part of my brain was gone after this. And this is where things got way worse. It was kind of crazy. The final pop was like the audible noise of my mind fully breaking under all the pressure. So from here, my memory on when all of these things happened is like trying to remember putting together a puzzle that's missing like half of its pieces. But I do know the highlights. I remember a glimpse of my mom and her boyfriend sitting by me, and my hearing came back, good thing, and at this point I was coming close to an entire day's worth of no sleep, so everyone was trying to tell me to go to sleep, and I remember just waking up to random doctors and being just so confused as what was going on. There's this one guy who came in who was like a room checker or something, and when he opened the door, a kid screamed, because I mean, like, this is a children's hospital, and that makes sense, but I thought that this guy was trying to lure me out into the hall to get me to talk to this screaming kid, and the kid would not stop screaming, so I came to the conclusion that he was autistic for some reason, and every single kid that I saw from here on out in the hospital I thought was autistic. I remember my mom and her boyfriend telling me that kids like me who go here stay forever, which they didn't actually say. I had a lot of delusions about my mom's boyfriend being my dad, and I called him my dad. There's a lot of stuff there I don't really remember. But this all gave me the narrative that I was autistic and I was in some detainment building for autistic kids. There's a security camera in my room as well that did not bode well with me. I was insanely paranoid about the camera, and at one point it started talking to me. It would spout different reports about my demeanor and my overall status and health. The camera told my mom about every potential diagnosis and told her I was autistic. I thought the Pokemon sticker nurse lady was on the other side, so I did like a cat ear pose in my bed because I thought that would convince her to let me go. That was when literally Wally entered my room. It was mostly it was a telemedicine card, because I remember seeing other doctors FaceTime through the screen, and that makes sense because I don't think there was anybody in that hospital that was classified with diagnosing me at the time, so there had to be some doctor Zoom call meeting arranged. I don't remember what I said to them though. I just remember the cart looking like a literal robot, and it was like some marvel of technology to be looking at. The autistic paranoia got worse when those student nurses would come in and start talking to me who low-key looked like they could be my age. I thought they were the hospital's little autistic minions that got set out to do the higher-ups bidding. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of not fun feelings that came from this experience though, and the worst was when I still wasn't sleeping and my mom asked the nurses what were the things we should be worried about, and the nurses started talking about seizures, which I know this happened because it's just true. This terrified me, and I actually started trying to sleep for the first time, and closing my eyes was like stepping into hell. When my eyes were open, I would see regular things with wrinkles in them. I'd see the walls and people and have deep dark shades inside the wrinkles, almost as if everything was made out of paper. And I remember even telling my mom I was scared of the shade. I was scared of the shades. This is definitely tied into all of the drawing I was doing and the shading and everything, but I was seeing it kind of in my POV. It was really weird. I remember my pillow looked like something out of an indie game that Corey Kenshin would play, that type of pixelation. It looked like stretch res. It looked like everything had stretched resolution, I guess. Back to trying to sleep though, I would close my eyes and then instantly my head would be filled with voices of nurses making remarks about me they were bantering over a movie they were watching. They weren't doing their job. They were watching a movie, which was me. They were having time off, or they were on their break or something, and they were making these remarks about me. It was really weird. I saw bright white lines streaking across my vision, lines that a pencil would make, paired with this horrible scribbling noise. There was also a moment where I could hear my therapist talking to me, and she gave me this Spider-Man who do you want to be type speech, which I don't know what she said, but I know it was something related to that. And I mean, it was that part actually kind of hyped me up, I'm not gonna lie. This is the closest I thought I was to dying though. Still kind of to this day, it was scary, but because I really wasn't sleeping and I was already so confused, and I thought if I don't go to sleep in the next few hours, I'm gonna get a seizure and die. It was bad, and it went on for a really long time. At least that's how I remember it. This leads me into the next phase, where I guess I did get some sleep, and this pregnant nurse leads me to the hall and into the bathroom. She was showing me where the bathroom is, and as she opens the door, she says, "Time to go potty," or like, the potty's here. I don't know exactly how it was said, but she said that. And then goes, oh, sorry, I have a 2-year-old at home. Words just slip out sometimes. This was not in my head. I really remember this. And all I have to say is I get it, but fuck you. Why would you say that to me knowing my situation and just visibly being able to know that I'm not 2 years old? Like, what are we doing? So this entirely just converted me into a toddler as I stepped into the bathroom. And this bathroom had 2 toilets. Now, there is reasons for this, but not in like a major in-your-face actual answer. It can be for a lot of reasons. But this broke my brain even more right after being called a toddler pretty much, and it was like I had to make a life or death decision on which toilet I was going to use. Looking back on this, one was substantially bigger than the other, and it was a children's hospital, so one's probably for the little ass kids and the other is for adults, but I was hella confused. I came out into the hall and had this weird realization after looking at all the nurses, and more of that racist white people ruling over everything tapped in, and I started freaking out about that. I really don't know why. I thought that the IV in my arm was pumping orange goo into my veins, and the goo was the chemical compound of dopamine, or at the time I just called it fun. I was telling everybody that fun was getting put into my arm. Then I got sent up to floor 2, and I was on a whole nother world at this point. This new room was way better than the last one, but still wasn't that good. The pregnant lady came back after I pissed my pants, and as I'm walking down the hall, probably leaving a pee trail behind me, I look down and notice that she's pregnant. I don't know how this entered my brain at all, but somehow I convinced myself I was a cannibal after seeing this, and as I'm looking down at her belly, I just stop, and then I silently emoted on her, like I rubbed my hands together and did this yummy action with my hands, and then I just got back up and started walking like nothing happened. I'm not a psychopath, cannibal, serial killer, I promise. Putting all this together, I'm pretty sure this was night 2, and it was a pretty crazy one. This was when my family started coming to. I remember, like, my aunt walked in, and I saw her face, and then I closed my eyes really hard, and I saw, like, a rainbow version of the Undertale heart, like, break, and then I don't know what happened after that. I was convinced that the doctors were keeping me there because I was straight, and I had to turn gay to be allowed to leave. I told my mom over and over that I was gay, and also to my aunt, who is gay. And my family fully thought I was coming out to them. I was seeing things as like watercolor paint paper, and my vision would switch from like regular to white line art, like I was living in Greg Heffley's universe, and then to sometimes really weird watercolor splatter stuff. So I went from like watercolor to Diary of the Wimpy Kid, again from the art fixations. While all of this was happening, I developed this condition called catatonia, which is like shell shock. Well, it's not like shell shock, but it looks like shell shock. It's a condition that can stem from psychosis or schizophrenia, where your brain isn't able to really control your body and decides it's going to stop trying, and you end up becoming frozen pretty much. And you're only able to say like one word in sentences, or just like nothing at all, and you have like really, really slow movements. And speaking from experience, that's all correct. I remember when it hit because it was actually so weird. I was laying down, and out of nowhere, like I looked up, and then my neck tensed up so hard to the point where I couldn't move at all. I was literally stuck in the slight looking up from laying down position, and I was just like stuck there. And my mom tried to put pillows under to support my neck, but it was so tense that they weren't really doing anything because my head was stuck in that position and my neck muscles wouldn't move. The frozen part eventually got better, but I still had all the other symptoms. My mom told me after that I would talk at a snail's pace and like I was in slow motion, paired with randomly bursting out and with agitation, and I would start like pacing around the room and always try to leave. my mom would try to distract me by having me like take sheets off and back on my bed to get me to stop focusing on trying to leave. And then I'd just randomly dart for the door. Security guards were always catching me out in the halls, and I remember this one security guard took me back to my room, and he like tried to calm me down by counting down from 10. This is where the weirdest symptom of catatonia comes in, which is mimicking other people's actions. I just stared at this guy dead in the face and put my fingers up just like he was, and I tried to copy his exact movements. My mom's friend also came to see me, and at one point she started dancing with my mom to cheer me up, and I just did the exact same thing that they were doing. They thought it was just me dancing, but it was really me just like copying whatever I saw someone else doing. I want to try to explain what psychosis is like when it comes to really bad cases like mine. Because an uneducated person like me back then just thought it was she was like going crazy for a day after smoking weed or something like that. Which is possible, but like very, very short term. If you really have and are stuck in psychosis, it's basically like this. You completely lose touch with yourself as a person, and you slowly forget who you are. Whoever you were before becomes this like amalgamation of sloppily put together broken little pieces of memory. And the most basic facts about yourself, like your name, and I didn't even know my birthday. Like that's pretty much all you have. All while feeling like you're in some dream where your imagination leads you to more negative and paranoid thoughts than good ones. I can't even say it's paranoia because everything that I was thinking I didn't think was real. I knew it was real. There wasn't a part of my body that was even capable of being skeptical. There wasn't a part of me that was able to be skeptical. There wasn't a part of my body that was even capable of being skeptical about my own thoughts because there was no ounce of my brain that thought I was wrong. Whenever I was skeptical about something, though, it was because I was believing that I was being held captive by the hospital and they were using autistic kids as slaves and yada yada yada. Paranoia like that. But back to the security guard. Because people were always trying to get me to write down my birthday, and I would always write down the wrong date. I just convinced myself that my birthday was today, and I started telling everybody that it was my birthday. I was really fixated on birthdays. So when this security guard was staring me face to face, counting down, his eyeballs looked huge, and his pupils were massive, like it was almost taking up his entire eyeball. And this led me to believe that when every man has his birthday, their pupils dilate in size, and that's how you can tell if it's their birthday. I interpreted this as a burden that men had to carry as some punishment by God or something. I stared back into his eyes, pretty happy that we had the same birthday, all while copying his movements. There's more birthday stuff coming up, so stay tuned. I was looked at by a bunch of doctors, but one of them that came in I deemed as gay and decided that they were my ticket out of there. Sadly, I don't remember what I did after that, but I probably just tried to convince him I was gay. This leads me to the peak of my insanity, floor 3. And this is when I started to smell this odor coming off of me, and I thought it was like the pheromones of masculinity. And there would be doctor dudes that came in and they would have that same smell. This smell was really just because I smelled like absolute shit. At this level, I was pissing and shitting myself quite occasionally, which I know that's hella embarrassing, but I cannot reiterate enough to you that I was brain dead, literally. There was nobody home anymore. But there was this one instance where I was sent to the bathroom to shit not in my pants. And I don't know what caused me to believe this, but I ended up thinking that when people go to poop, it inevitably kills one baby in childbirth, and after you're done, a baby is born. And I believed this with like all my heart, and I started tweaking on the toilet. I started treating it like I was killing and giving birth to a baby at the same time. My grandpa actually went in and looked at me, which there was no door to the bathroom. And my mom told me he said I looked like I was in like some of the worst pain of my life. Once I finished giving birth, I heard the sound of a baby crying out in the hospital, and I immediately felt traumatized to what I had done, but had to do. A doctor then came in, and I assumed that his newborn just died for some reason, and he was coming to get me out of anger, and his eyes looked like black scribbles, and they seemed to like gleam, like there was a glimmer, there was a shine to it at the same time. If you can imagine what like the generic baseline anime eye art style looks on like a real human eyeball, like that's what it looked like. Like ultra realistic SpongeBob, you know those pictures? It was like that, but if like there's like anime eyes on the guy, but not in like the like photoshopped stupid way. It was indescribable. So the whole birthday thing and shit thing led me to probably the most craziest hallucination I had in that hospital, and it was that dudes shit a blue like stress ball shit, like it's like a turd, but it's like a stress ball and it's blue. And when girls and women go shit, it's pink, and they just get little stress balls on their birthday. And I thought this was like the equivalent to like I was learning the like secret information that adults knew. It was like the talk, but it was the talk for like going into adulthood instead of just like that really awkward situation that you have with like your parents when you're like 9 or whatever, you know? It was like that, and like I thought I was like figuring out the secret. I was like, damn, yo, my mom was really like stealing my shit on my birthday because I did not know that shit comes out as blue. What the fuck? Another thing I want to know is my very amazing aunt gave me this stained glass piece while I was in all of this, and it's cool. I have it up on my window like today. It was just a gift to get me through it, and during that time I interpreted it as like the little guy in the corner, the dark piece in the corner was me, and then like the red parts were my mom, and then this like little smoky part here was like my like prior drug use, and like it was really just a picture of an electricity pole. But I mean, I'd say I still have that same symbolism for it to this day. The new and last room I was in was the best out of the last two, and it had a really nice view high above the hospital, and the sky was like full of stars. My mom mentioned something about pollution, and I looked down at the floor, and there was like this tiny light that was coming out of the floor, which was like to illuminate it. And I connected these two things, and I thought that this light was causing light pollution in the sky. There was also workers like working on top of the different buildings that we were looking down on. This made a lot of sense to me because they were obviously the autistic slaves that I ran into on floor 1. I really needed to get out of there. The last bit of my stay is pretty choppy and hard to remember, and the only things I can remember is going down to the drain in the shower of my room and talking to it. I don't remember what I said to it, but I told my mom that my friend was down there and there was like an autistic kid stuck in the pipes. The final thing that I can remember is hugging my grandpa before going to the mental institution and telling him that I saw Pennywise, which this makes a lot of sense. One being that my grandpa was the first to show me all the good horror movies from back in the day, and I even watched the original miniseries of It with him. And two being that I was literally talking to a drain, and if you've read or watched It, then you understand how that tracks. This marks the end of my hospital stay, but it doesn't end there. From here, I got sent to a mental institution called Unity, which I don't really feel like I need to touch on because nothing that remarkable happened. Basically, if you're under the age of 18 and you're experiencing things like psychosis, trauma, anxiety, and it becomes like unmanageable, and also if you live in Portland and your caretaker can afford it, then you will be sent here. And it's honestly not so bad. I mention its name because I know there's mental rehabilitation centers that aren't the best out there, but Unity is actually hella chill. Yes, you're put in a room, you have no access to your phone or anywhere outside of the building, but you can leave the room. Engage in groups, watch movies, get snacks, talk to psychiatrists, therapists, and visits from family. All the staff there really weirdly seemed like they actually loved their job. Starting out, my first few days were not like this. I didn't leave my room, and I was convinced there was a dead kid stuffed underneath my bed. But after that, things started to smooth out. A staff member told my mom that the first group that I went to, I walked in and the teacher asked me what seat I wanted to sit in, and I just pointed directly at her and I said, right there. And I don't remember this at all, but I mean, hey, I don't play around with my seats at the mental asylum, okay? I'm not really sure how long I was there. It was definitely over a week, though. But I slowly started to come back to reality. I made friends with some of the kids. A girl gave me her number on a piece of paper, and I put it in my sock, only for the staff to find out and make me give it back. I started sleeping. My psychiatrist was actually the GOAT, and he just came into my room and said, think of any cartoon. And I said, Homer Simpson, and he was like, all right. And he pulled up a picture of Homer Simpson, and he drew a picture of him pointing at me with chalk in literally less than a minute. And it was good too. Homer Simpson pointing at me like Uncle Sam would serve to really scare me every night after that, but I never erased it until the final day. The only paranoid thoughts that I did have during my time there were that all the pipes in the building were connected, and that every time you would turn on the faucet, it would turn on in someone else's room, and you would be able to communicate that way. Which is crazy, but there wasn't a handle for the faucets, and it's like a button you have to press. So I guess that makes a little sense. But I will die on this hill. I'm 100% confident. One time we were in a group doing watercolor painting, and the sink in the room just turned on like it was remote control. I watched it happen. Things would seem to be all in good until my final day, where for my last group, which was instruments, where we all are forced to play one for some reason, it completely threw me off. A kid that was very clearly not mentally there came in, and he wasn't with the rest of the kids. He was a new kid. He pulled up, and for some reason I couldn't stop focusing on him, and then it was time for me to leave. I breathed fresh air, and my mom thought that I was better, but this really wasn't the case. This is where the very stereotypical schizophrenia, paranoid thoughts came in. While we were driving home, there was a stoner electric van that drove by, and I saw this as a message to me to never smoke weed again, and that there were people out there that would come after me if I didn't obey. The other thing was that my mom's boyfriend mentioned to my cool psychiatrist that he used to do graffiti, and this was a big no-no for me. I turned into a crazed conspiracy theorist in a few seconds. I started thinking that the feds were after me, and this continued for a long, long time. I thought every passerby I'd see on the sidewalk or car near my house was some type of organization, which is really interesting because I always grew up knowing that if I ever went crazy, thinking stupid stuff like the government is after me, I thought it was stupid, but no. I thought that the feds knew my favorite color and every purple car was one of the feds. I thought that little camera that's by the slidey door where you get drive-through fast food was the feds. Every message on a soda can, brand label, or color of anything had some deeper underlying message. This was nothing like when the psychosis first kicked in and the whole children's hospital thing happened. This was very different. I was really showing signs of schizophrenic behavior. The final major thing that I can remember from all of this was that the first night I was back home, I wanted to make spaghetti, and I looked at the package label on the meatballs and told myself that the government is secretly just feeding us people and is using the dead as a recycle bin to put little pieces into every meat product we eat. And then I just laughed. I laughed. Insane anime main character laugh. And my mom asked me what was so funny, and I just kept laughing. after this, I somehow recovered and came back to sanity. It was a rough journey, though. There would be nights where I would just go crazy and get so mad at literally nothing. I destroyed my nice-ass Thanos gauntlet, which I'm so sad about because it was sick. I'd hide myself in the garage. One time I grabbed a kitchen knife in front of my mom and I told her I was going to cut art into my skin. And just crazy shit like that. I wrote this, which I want to preface. I'm not racist and I don't support racist people, and I have nothing against people with disabilities. I was just a kid who was crazy, and also is mixed and to this day isn't very outspoken or secure around their racial identity. So, yeah. But somehow, I prevailed. I eventually started acting normal and tapered off my meds. Slowly, and then bam, I was myself again. I eventually reconnected back with my friends and family. I got sent to a new school where I met some absolutely amazing people. Shout out to them. You know who you are if you're watching this video. And then from then, I went to a high school with my cousin, and I originally started elementary school with him, so to be finishing high school with him at another school is awesome. So that's the story. There's probably hundreds of things I'm leaving out, but that's really all I can remember. I hope that clears up anything to the people who were wondering, or if I educated some people, and yeah, I'll leave it with this. I'm not going to speak on anybody's current or past experiences with drug use because that's their business and it's not my place to speak on at all. If that's your thing and you know what you're doing, or if you're struggling with drug use or just don't care, like, that's all fine. But what I'm trying to say is that from first-hand experience, I have seen the end of the mental road, and it's not pretty. Sure, there's always the risk of dying from overuse of a substance or whatever ill effects it has on your body, but what it does to your mind is something different entirely. And the last fragment that you have left of your mind will wish you were dead. If you do those types of things without thinking twice about your mental state, or making immature decisions on if this is a really good time to trip on shrooms in my life, or am I really trying to hit this crystal dab blunt with a bunch of kids that half of them I don't even know, and I'm just gonna end up like greening out anyway in front of them, and I don't even really like the feeling of getting high, then don't. Because trust me, if something up in that brain gets knocked up and you end up like me, you really might as well be dead. Stuck in between reality and the void of your brain's endless disarray of thoughts is just horrible, and it's the worst thing that I have ever experienced in my entire lifespan, and my 18 years on this earth. So please take note. There's people out there who went through the same thing as me and they didn't make it out. I was told if something like this were to happen to me again, then the chances of me actually being able to come out of it were very, very slim. So like, I'm not trying to be your health teacher or anything, but borderline message is don't be a dumbass. So thanks for listening to my story. I'm trying to get a green screen going, and my next video should be on every single arc in One Piece. I am about to finish One Piece, and I want to rank every single arc, but I want to get a camera set up with a green screen, so I think I'm going to do that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Deuces.